Okay. I admit, it's not actually playing on the Super Nintendo Junior. Instead, it's playing on the Super Retro One HD. Let me explain how. So a while ago, I was browsing AliExpress. This was before the tariff situation hit. Screwed everything up. But I had purchased this just before that had happened, and I just didn't do the video on it because I was working on other projects and didn't have time. But I ended up seeing this as a recommendation, whatever you want to call it. It was basically one of these little adapters. They call it Extension Converter for MD Retro, whether it's actually made by them or not, hard to say. But I saw this, I'm like, is that like a Super Game Boy, but for Genesis games? Well, I thought it was that until I actually got the box and noticed the AV cable and then the AV out. So I suspect this is almost certainly a Genesis on a chip. And all it's really using the Super Nintendo for, or in my test case here, the Super Retron 8 HD, was probably just using it for power and controller input. Why they didn't bother trying to filter the video through, especially since they have the full connector here, I don't know. It might have been easier for them. Maybe they didn't want to have to create, a ROM or anything like that that could interface with the SNES and all the circuitry and everything, but who knows? But I saw that and I figured, you know what? Let me pick it up. And yeah, I was disappointed when it came with this, but I figured, well, too late now. I'm not going to return it, especially with all the craziness with the tariffs. Am I going to be able to get it refunded? Are they going to even accept it? It's hard to say. So I figured, well, I'll just keep it and make a video on it at some point. So, and as you saw, the way it basically works is you just plug your Genesis game in the top, plug this into your console, turn it on, and that's it. As long as you have the AV cable out connected, you shouldn't have any issues being able to play. Why you would want something like this, I don't know. Maybe you only have enough room for one console, so you have a Super Nintendo, but you really want to play the Genesis library, and you decided to get yourself one of these things here. So anyway, let's go ahead and we'll just open this up and see what it comes with, and see how it works maybe. Looks like it's just 4 Phillips screws. Also, I'm not sure why there's a switch here for 6B and 3B. I suspect that means 6-button controller or 3-button controller. Maybe it acts as a pseudo mode switch because the Super Nintendo won't be able to necessarily pass the appropriate button combination to turn a 6-button controller into a 3-button. So that's probably there as a bypass. And here's a look at the PCB, along with 2 capacitors, 2 resistors, and a crystal. A little bit better lighting. Hopefully we can get a better look at this here, as well as the switch here for NTSC PAL, I'm guessing PAL Europe, NTSC Japan, and PAL Australia, PAL America for South America. And yeah, I believe the TCT6803 is just a Genesis on a chip. Got a couple of blobs here. I wonder what's under here. Not sure what this is either. I'll have to look it up and see what that is. But this also looks like it may be able to support some sort of flash storage, so maybe this would be able to play games as well. Just on its own. It's also possible this is just a generic PCB that they were able to kind of hack together. I don't know. That's interesting. Really want to know what those blob chips are, but I don't think I'm going to be able to find out. I'm going to go ahead and get this back together, and we'll give it a test with a few different games to see if I have any issues. Clearly my fake EverDrive works with it, but we'll see if Virtual Racing works. We'll see if my 6-pack works, and maybe one of these EA games. Alright, so I don't want to potentially ruin my actual Super Nintendo, so I'm just going to continue to use the Super Retron HD. We're going to try Virtual Racing if I could get the lighting over here better. And let's see. Nothing. Probably because I disconnected the AV cable and forgot to plug it back in. Alright, let's try this again. Virtual Racing. and nothing. And that's typical for some of these Genesis on the chip clones. Not all of them support games like Virtual Racing and even games like Sonic and Knuckles, etc. So, all right, well, let's try an EA game. I'm gonna go with Bulls versus Lakers NBA playoffs. Oh, there we go. But it seems to work, so. All right, well, let's try the 6-pack cartridge. That's Sega's official multi-cart that they released back in the day. Oh, there we go. It does seem to work fine. Interesting. There we go. Yep, so that works fine. I don't really know what else I can show off with this thing. It works with some games and others it doesn't. However, I do have another thing to show off. And the other thing I have to show off is another one of these adapters. Which one? This time for the NES. And it's going to be the same setup. You know, it's got a separate AV cable, so it's only outputting video through the cartridge adapter itself and not the SNES, unfortunately. And again, at the time that I ordered this, I didn't realize that that was the situation. Pictures didn't really show that off very clearly, so. But I bought them both because if I bought them both, I had free shipping. I figured, why not? And, I mean, it's very similar. It's just larger to accommodate the larger cartridges. 6 screws instead of 5. There's the AV out port there. No region switch this time. But we'll go ahead and test this out and try a couple of games. One thing about these is that they do have a little bit of a death grip, but that could also be because of the cartridge connector on the actual Super Retro and HD. So, all right, I've got it hooked up. Let me go grab a couple of games and we'll test it out. All right, so we're going to try Super Mario Brothers 2. Sorry, it's a little dark, but I want to give the TV the best chance of showing up on camera. The sound is a little weird. Also, the colors are really dark too. Oh yeah, so this... They do have B and A mapped to B and A on the SNES controller, as opposed to having Y and B. But the reason the sound is off is because on a lot of these NES on the chips, some kind of circuitry got reversed, and so one of the sound channels has been swapped with another. In fact, I believe there's some ROM patches out there for people that have clone consoles that they can apply to them to get them to sound correctly, because they will reverse the sound channels within the actual game itself. Either way, this works. I'm going to try Shadowgate next. Yeah, this adapter definitely has a death grip on NES cartridges. And it seems to work too. Again, it's dark. Let me see if I can compensate with my camera here. Oh, Start's not working. Let's try again. Okay, that time it went. Seems to be very picky. But it seems to work fine, so let's go ahead and we'll open this one up just to confirm my suspicions and wrap this video up. Alright, we just have these 6 screws to take out, so I'll take those out real quick. Oddly enough, this screw has a little bit of corrosion on it. I don't know if it's going to come through on camera. The only one that's like that. But yeah, it's, that blob there is probably the NES and a chip. I'm guessing this has to be some sort of ROM that actually does interface with the SNES to an extent. Although, again, why they didn't build out the circuitry to pass video on through, I'll never know. But not much to it otherwise, although it does have a spot there, I'm guessing for an actual NES ROM chip possibly, so that you could use this as a multi-card of sorts, but some more logic chips here. And yeah, so that's that. And to wrap up, what if Ninten-did? Well, we know the answer to that question now. And it took, what, 40 years, 30, 40 years for it to happen, but you can now play Sonic with blast processing on your Super Nintendo, albeit very jakily. I do not recommend getting these things at all. I don't know if the electronics that are in there are actually put together the correct way, in such a way that it won't damage your Super Nintendo or your cartridges or anything like that. On top of the fact that that they don't do the video output through the console itself, kind of just sucks. I mean, they've got almost everything in there. Why could they not filter the AV through the actual console itself too? Because on top of that, you'd be able to use, if you're using a real Super Nintendo, RGB out, or if you're using one of these clone consoles, HDMI out. And I know the HDMI on this thing isn't great, but you'd still have that ability and get a much crisper picture. Instead, you're stuck with just crappy AV. So let me know what you guys thought. Again, I don't recommend them. Kind of just like a novelty thing. I don't even know if I'm going to keep them. I may just get rid of them, sell them. Have you guys run across anything like this? Have you run across anything like this that will actually filter the audio and video through the console itself? Let me know, and well, let us all know down in the comments below. Otherwise, thanks all. Catch you later.